and welcome to another Luminar Coffee Break. I'm your host, Vanelli. Now, our topic today is how to make food photos look delicious. And we have one of the top food photographers in our industry. She's a photographer, an author, and an educator. Please welcome Nicole Young. Hello, Nicole.
Hello. Thanks for having me on, Vanelli.
Oh, I'm glad to have you on. Now, Nicole, what do you have for us?
So I guess today we're kind of doing more of an iced tea break instead of a coffee break. I ended up with, I would call it like a bushel of mint at one point, and I used it for what I could, but then I had a bunch left over, so I thought I would make some mint tea, and I just basically put a whole bunch of mint into a pitcher, put some hot water in it, and let it refrigerate. And I thought, this could look really pretty. So I set up a tiny little setup in my, right now I'm living in a really small apartment. I'm in a 700 square foot apartment. So I created a tiny little space by kind of what my front door, back door would be, and a little natural light setup. And I took some photos of the tea. So yeah, that's what I'm going to show today. I'm actually going to kind of walk through. I'll show a bunch of the photos, kind of the progression, because I usually start out with an idea and then it evolves over the course of 10 or however many minutes I'm actually working on this set. And you'll kind of see this because I have all of the photos from this shoot here, and I even have a few behind the scenes to share as well.
Well, that's awesome. All right, well, take us through it.
Okay, so are we looking at the screen right now?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll start. So I'll just kind of scan through real quickly. There's quite a few photos, and the reason is because as I got towards the end, I did some kind of like high speed frame trying to capture pouring the tea there. So I'll start at the beginning, and every time I do a food shoot, this is obviously a very boring shot right here. This is just me putting things on the table and seeing what it looks like, what the light is doing. And this here is very bland, so I kind of progress. So I move things around a little bit. I kind of position, the backdrop and the cup that it's in and the light and figure out where that's coming from. And, you can see how it's changing a little bit from shot to shot. And then I finally decide, okay, I'm just going to go for it. I put the ice cubes in there. I poured the tea. I added the garnish. And I just kind of make small changes, always reassessing, and this shot I got here, and I'm looking at this, and the backdrop, the background just got too dark. And so I probably had I'm pretty sure I had to fill light or like a foam board off to the left to kind of bounce some of it back. But, again, let me see what it looks like if I take the backdrop away. Let me put the backdrop back, And so I really am just moving things. And eventually I get to, kind of a light setup that I would like. And it's probably about, let me see if I can back up and kind of find.
I like that. So you're experimenting as you go.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, because I'm using natural light, and this is kind of a really quick setup. I almost always use some type of backlight or side lighting with this type of photography, with working with like something that I want kind of illuminated from behind. Of course, I'm going to want the light to glow through the back of it. So like I said, I just kept progressing and progressing. And for these, just so let me go to the info so you can see my information here. I use Fujifilm cameras and lenses. I had the X-T3 and the 80mm macro lens with this. I almost always use macro lenses with my photography, not because I need to get super close up. It helps because sometimes the food is really small, but it also, it allows me to get as close as I want, and also lets me really drop that background out as well.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So you shot this at 2.8.
Yeah, I was wide open for this one.
Sweet.
Yeah. And one of the things I like about this is I was able to get like that nice glow on, when I decided to start pouring, I get this really nice kind of glow coming through the water there in the pitcher. And this is kind of where I kind of felt like these are the shots that I really like, and I think this is what I really stuck with.
A really slow shutter speed.
Yep.
So
let me jump over
tripod,
to
obviously.
Yeah, let me show you. So this is a good, it's actually
nice.
have probably a better, this is my behind the scenes. You can see it's just, there's my workout stuff and my Nest camera and some of my air plants. So this is the window that I was using. I'm on a north facing side of my building, And I mean, this could have been a tripod. I happen to have a studio stand that has just kind of been, I've had it for years. And so it just follows me around, and it's really easy to move around. And, I can position the arm up and down. I can, actually physically move it because it has casters on the bottom. This is, let's see, this is called a custom grip, and it allows me to rotate the camera vertically and horizontally, like super quickly. And then I have I think there's like some type of a pan head. I can't remember. I think it's a Benro.
Quick
I
release.
honestly couldn't Yeah, yes. I'm on a quick release plate, but then I have like one of those tripod heads that you can easily move left, up, down. It's kind of, I call it my Frankenstein setup for my tripod, because I have so many things going on there, and it's just kind of evolved over the years. But this is the final setup for everything. There's very little light. I think it was it's probably an overcast day. It doesn't look super sunny if I'm looking out at the trees there. Um, so the light is really coming in over here, kind of side lighting, kind of at a not a full 90-degree angle, maybe more of a 45. And it brings in enough light to illuminate the picture and then the glass. And then it really lets that ice you can see all the little crackles in the ice. And then I have this, I think this is called a replica surface. Um, they kind of replicate, actual surfaces. Like this is a concrete one. And I thought it might make a good darker backdrop to help contrast with the brightness of like the tea and the ice cubes. And then right here off to the left is just a very simple piece of white foam board, 2 by 3 foot piece of foam board that I kind of cut in half and then tape it so I can fold it so it'll stand up right on its own. And that's what I use for my reflector. So that's my setup. You don't need a lot of space for this kind of stuff. You just need good light and a table.
Beautiful.
So yeah, and here's a little bit more close up of with how my camera was positioned, and the light kind of hitting everything. And this little piece of wood that I got. I found it. I think it's like the top of a barrel, like a wine barrel or something. And I found it at some random wood shop and asked if I could buy it. So they're like, yeah, sure. So I think I got it for like $20, and it's a great little thing. I use it a lot now. But yeah, I've been doing food photography for quite some time. A lot of people know me as a food photographer because I have a few books out on food photography. It's not the only thing I do, but it is definitely a passion of mine, and it's something I thoroughly enjoy. So
you actually have a nature class coming up this week on the 11th.
Yeah, on Thursday, because I live out in the Pacific Northwest, and one of the reasons I live out here is because I absolutely love the forests and the waterfalls and the mushrooms. I like photographing mushrooms. It's kind of a new thing of mine. One of my friends, Jess, she's really into mushrooms and mushroom photography, so she's kind of gotten me into that. But I'm going to be talking about that and showing some of my photos and the gear that I use, and I'll walk through some editing as well. So that's on Thursday, if you guys want to take a look at that. Let's go ahead and jump. I actually favorited a couple of photos here, and in Luminar, if you want to favorite something, if you hover over it, let me see if I can't get any larger. It's on largest already. If I hover over an image, there's a little heart there, and you can just click that heart, and it will favorite it. And then when you have your images favorited, up on the top right here, you can actually select your favorites. So you can kind of, just kind of narrow down, go down to those that you want to really work with. And this right here is the photo I'm going to be editing. So I'll go ahead and jump right to it. Do you have any questions, V?
Nope, this is great. I liked your setup, and I liked how you showed the camera settings, 2.8, tripod, slow shutter speed, because that's what's getting that water looking.
Yeah, the slow walk. Yeah. So, I didn't really talk about that too much. So because the light that's coming through the window, it's enough light because, it doesn't I don't require I don't want bright sunlight. I want diffused sunshine. So it's nice and soft. Usually with the area that I'm in, I'm not going to have enough light to do a handheld shot. I don't want my ISO to be super high. So I'm going to put it on some type of a tripod, and you saw my Frankenstein setup that I have. But you're going to have a slower shutter speed because of that. And what was my shutter speed? I don't remember. It is 1/58 of a second. So, I mean, I might be able to handheld that, but obviously I'm not going to if I'm also going to be pouring the tea at the same time, because that'd be quite a challenge. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start editing this. I am in the edit mode, and you can get to that on the very top right of your monitor or your application. And I'm in the Essentials tab, but first, what I want to do is crop this because it may have been level in my shot, but the table might not have been level. There could be a lot of things going on. It just looks a little crooked to me. So I'm going to click on that crop icon at the top. I'm not really going to crop it. I'm really just going to rotate it. So I'm going to hover over on the right, look for that little curved cursor, and just move it up until I get it so it looks a little bit more straight. And I think that's probably good right there. And I'll click done in that top right. Okay, so now I'll jump over to the top of the essentials. When I'm editing raw photos in Luminar, I almost always start at the top and usually work my way down to the ones that I actually want to use. So I'll start out with the light, and I don't really need to make a huge adjustment. I tend to get pretty accurate white balance with my Fujifilm cameras when I'm using natural light. So I'm really just going to increase the temperature slightly. I mean, sometimes what I do is I like to kind of move them to the extremes, really to see, like where they are. I'm going to reset that real quickly. And then just, it kind of lets my eyes adjust and see what maybe the best setting is. So here I'm just going to slightly increase it. And I'm also going to do a quick before and after toggle, and there's not a lot of change. I can see it. It might be difficult. It might be difficult to see coming through the video recording. But while I'm still here inside of this light panel, I'm going to click Advanced Settings, and I'm going to go down to the curves because I like to add brightness and contrast to my food photos, and I usually do that with an S-curve. And to create an S-curve, you click on the top right quadrant. It creates a little dot there, and then just drag it straight up. And I'm watching my photo as I do this, so I don't overdo it. If you go way too far, it's going to get really, really bright. So I just want a really slight increase there. And then I'm going to do the same but opposite down in that left quadrant. So I'm going to click and I'm going to drag down. And that's going to add brightness and contrast. Actually, I'm going to bring that brightness up a touch. It's looking a little too contrasty. So actually what I'm going to do instead of playing with this anymore, I'm going to go up to my shadow slider and I'm going to increase the shadows a bit. And that'll help kind of balance things out. Okay, so as I do this, I'm just going to keep going through and checking my before and after. Every time I make some type of, a major adjustment, I guess, I like to just kind of see the progression, and so that way I don't overdo something. And let's see, another thing I want to do here is I'm going to check my highlights because there's a few bright spots here. I just want to make sure it's not overdone in any one area. So I'm going to press the J key. And when I do that, if you look up in the top right in the histogram, there are these little triangles. And when those are filled in, that means you can actually see where the highlights are and the lowlights as well. There's none of those, and there's nothing that's pure black here, so there's not going to be any of those like blue areas. So you can also click, I didn't mean to do that. There we go. I'm going to click and toggle that on and off, and the J key is going to do the same thing. So this doesn't look too bad. I'm okay with those little highlight spots. I could play with the highlights slider and drag it to the left, and that will help remove them, but it also kind of flattens the photo and I lose some of that contrast. So I'm just going to keep it where it is, but it's a good thing to do if you think you might have some of those bright spots. And I want to reset my highlight slider, and the best way to do that is just to hover over the name of the setting. You can do this with pretty much any setting, and just double click it, and it will bring it back to its default setting. Okay, I'm done with the light panel, and next I'm going to go to AI Enhance. And I always use, or at least, first before I do that, I'm going to press J again and get rid of those highlights. For the AI Enhance, I pretty much use this, or at least see what it does with every single one of my photos, because it usually does a really good job. So I basically just take the AI accent slider and I move it to the right, and I'm just watching my photo. And you can see if I slide it back and forth pretty far, you could really see the good changes that it's making. And with the food photos, I find it does a really good job. So I'm going to toggle just that one adjustment off and on. And that added a little bit of brightness. It filled in some of the shadows, but it also added some contrast. And so I'm really happy with that. I'm going to toggle this whole thing off and on again. Just give myself a quick preview of everything I've done so far. And now I'm going to go down to the color setting. What I want to do here is I really want to make that mint pop. This is, this photo is about tea, but it's about mint tea. And the mint was fresh. It looked good, but it's not really coming through in the photo like I want it to. So I'm going to selectively adjust just the mint in this photo. Now, usually when you open up the color settings, it's going to look like this. So to get to the area that I want to show you, you have to click Advanced Settings, and now you have all of these different color options that you can work with. So what I want to do is go to that green color, and I'm going to increase the luminance, which will add brightness to only the green colors. And I'm just going to do it, well, it's about halfway. It's about almost at 50 there. And I'm also going to slightly increase the saturation. I don't want to go too far because it'll start looking kind of neon, and I don't want that. And let me toggle that off and on, and immediately that green, that mint has just really, really popped. And I have a lot of green in a lot of my images, I should say. I like to add garnish, whether it's mint or basil or whatever. Green, you can really help it stand out. And a lot of times it is a focus point in my photos too. So this is a really good technique. Sometimes you might need to use the yellow for this. It's kind of like working with foliage when you're doing a landscape photo. There's usually a lot of yellow coloring in grass and trees. And obviously this is kind of foliage. It's an herb, so there may be some yellow there as well. So I'm going to jump over to yellow and do the same thing. I'm going to slide that luminance slider to the right. And yeah, that's catching the tea as well. So, and I'll do the same thing with the saturation. I'll just slightly increase that saturation. So now let me toggle that adjustment off and on. And that really made the color in the image pop quite a bit.
Wow.
Let's see. Yeah, it's a fun trick, isn't it? All right. Any questions so far?
Nope.
Got any? All right, cool. Sweet. All right, now I'm going to jump over. I just clicked on Creative over on the far right there. So now I have a different set of tools to work with. The first thing I'm going to do is go to Mystical. I use this one in a lot of my photos as well. It's very versatile. It works with food, landscape, portraits, you name it. It works with so many images. And I basically just take the amount slider and I move it to the right, watch my photo. I don't want to go too far, or it starts to look like a food glamour shot. So I want to keep it kind of at a lower setting. And I tend to keep it between 20 and 30. Let me toggle that off and on. And it made a nice kind of a soft glow contrast. And just so you know, an alternative to using this is the Orton effect. And that's actually in portrait section. So if you go to Orton effect, you don't have to use Orton effect only with portraits. It works with any type of photo. So they're very similar. I just tend to use Mystical. Usually it's more accessible, and there are some more advanced settings with it, but either one is fine. I'm going to do a full before and after. Let's see how things are looking. Really making it pop. And while I'm still inside of the creative section, I'm going to jump down to the LUTs. I don't necessarily want to alter the color in this, but some of the default LUTs here in Luminar can do a really good job of just kind of enhancing and boosting the existing color. So I'm going to just choose a LUT, and it's kind of fun because you can just kind of scroll over and just see what they look like. And I know the one I want to use is Riverside, and it's too intense at the default setting of 30. So I'm going to decrease that down a little bit. Maybe I have it set there at about 15. And that it kind of added a little bit of blue to the background, which I'm totally okay with. And I just like what it did. It just kind of brought out some color and kind of saturation a little bit. So I'm just happy with that effect. I only have a few more settings that I'd like to change here. I'm going to go back into the essentials, and I'm going to jump down to landscape enhancer. Let's see. I wanted to play around with a few of them. I wanted to see what golden hour would look like, and I kind of like to see golden hour. I kind of think of golden hour as like a warming filter. So I don't want my food photos to be like yellow because you want the whites to be true white, but adding a little bit of golden hour can really just add a nice touch of warmth to it and make it appealing. And that was really, really subtle. You could also play with foliage enhancer with this type of thing, but you don't want to go too far with it, as you can see. Look at your nuclear drink that I just created for you. So I'm maybe just set this one to like 5 or 7 or something like that. And that added a little bit more impact into the, and changed those leaves a little bit to make them a little bit more bright. And the very last thing I do with nearly all of my images is I add a nice subtle vignette that just helps draw the eyes to the middle of the photo. again, when you open up Vignette, you're just going to see this more than likely. You're only going to see those two settings. I pretty much always click advanced settings to have all of those other options there. So the way I add vignettes is first I decrease the amount, and sometimes I go all the way, and I'm not going to keep it here, but this lets me really preview the other settings that I'm making. So I can increase the other thing I always do, and see how much more soft the edges of that vignette are becoming. I can add a little bit of inner light, which is going to add some brightness and even kind of further increase the ways that the vignette work to darken the edges, brighten the center. That's where your eye is going to look then in the middle. And then once I get those settings finished, I take my amount slider, and it almost looks like it disappears. But if I were to toggle it off and on, it's a nice subtle vignette.
Oh, yeah.
I could probably decrease it a little bit more. I don't really want my vignettes to be visible. I don't want you to look at a photo and go, oh, there's a vignette in that photo. I just want it to be enough to where it's just enough to make you not hang your eyes out too far in the corner of the image. You want to be looking at that T. So that is my edit. Let me go ahead and toggle that before and after. You can see how intense that is. And if you are like me and you like a more subtle edit, this is possibly more intense than I would want to use. Normally, let's say I want to scale it back. One of the great things about Luminar is you can do all of your edits to a layer and then go up to the layers panel. And there's a cool little slider here called adjustments amount. Take that slider, and if you move it all the way to 0, you can't see any of the adjustments you made. But you can, let's say, decrease it to about 80 or so. And now you have all of those edits added to your photo, but I just kind of reduce the intensity, and it's a little bit more subdued. But it still is a very big impact in the photo.
Awesome.
So that's it.
Hey, Nicole, that is great. You want to stop sharing your screen so we can see you?
Yeah, let me do that. Okay. You see me?
Nope, not yet.
It is not letting me. It's giving me that settings thing again. So you're just gonna have to stare at my photo. I can't get it to switch over to my face.
Well, hey, that's great. Nicole, thank you so much. We really appreciate your expertise on this. And where can we find out more about you?
The best place to find me is to go to my website. If you go to nicolesy.com, it's NICOLESY.com. That'll take you to my website, my blog, and from there you can find me on social media, or just look up Nicolesy, pretty much everywhere Nicolesy.
Gotcha. All right, and we also have that class coming up. I have it up on the screen. Let me pull it up real quick. One moment. Oh, I know, because you're sharing. Yes, if you could stop sharing your screen for a moment.
I can't. It is giving me some major.
No problem. All right.
So here. Oh, maybe there we go. Am I good? Can you see me?
One moment. Let me check. There's me. Yep. Here we are. Got it. All right. So Here we are. Nicole is going to be teaching you a class coming up on the 11th. And there we go. Up on the 11th. It's called Capturing the Beauty of Nature. Capturing the Beauty of Nature. And during that class, I know you're going to go through some of the gear that you used and some of your tips and tricks on working with moving water, making it look smoother and more realistic.
Yep. I'll be talking about all that stuff.
Well, that's going to be great. Again, that's coming up on the 11th. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us for another Luminar coffee break. We'll see you on the next coffee break.